Hello and welcome to the channel. Today I thought we'd do a deep dive into the Cryptek Arkana options and the best possible ways of using each of them and with which Cryptek model, then giving each Arkana a rating out of 5. I'll also be talking about all the ways to improve each Arkana too, just from my opinion of course. Now we did do a video on the Arkana just before the 9th edition codex was actually released. We're talking quite a while ago when we didn't have too much knowledge about how the 9th edition actually plays out, and of course since then lots of other factions have been released with their codexes and supplements, which has massively impacted the meta of the game. So for the majority of the video I'll be referring to data on pages 62 and 63 of the Necron Codex. Before we start with the Arkana options, we need to quickly ensure that we're aware of how to get them. So the first restriction is you simply need to fill the Battleforged list. Now some lists are not Battleforged, although they tend to not be in match play games, but in general if you're playing match play you're pretty much likely going to be having a Battleforged list there. Then of course it can only be used on a non-named Cryptek from the Codex, so you can't be given one of these Arcanas to Orican the Diviner for example, as it's a named character. So there's 4 Crypteks in total within the Codex. To take these Arkana options on, of course it's the Technomancer, the Chronomancer, the Psychomancer and the Plasmancer. Now 2 of those tend to be more used than the others, and a lot of people pre-Codex really thought the Psychomancer was going to be the auto-include Cryptek, but that didn't last too long, did it? Then the final restriction is you can only have 1 Arkana per Cryptek and you cannot duplicate any of the Arkana within a single list. So pretty much the same rules apply here to the Arkana as they do for the relics, except these are not actually relics. You can in fact put a relic on one of these Crypteks that are also carrying a Cryptek Arkana. Okay, so on the screen now we've got all the prices in terms of the points and the power level, which unfortunately are quite steep for where the current 40k game is right now. Maybe we do need to see a points decrease in an update somewhere along the lines, but for now they are what they are. So let's begin with the first option, which is the Atta Vindicator. So this one is for your Psychomancer model only. It's going to be costing you 1 power level or 25 points for the upgrade, which is actually the 3rd most expensive Arkana within the Arkanas list. So done in the end of the movement phase, you select an enemy unit excluding vehicles that are within 18 inches of the bearer, you roll 3d6, and if the total is equal or greater to the enemy unit's leadership, then they're going to suffer d3 mortal wounds. So this is effectively a 25 point smite in terms of both the odds of achieving it and the d3 mortal wounds. It looks like smite to me, except you can't unfortunately inflict d6 mortal wounds with it, but however on the other hand it can't be denied. Now a Psychomancer is generally not a great selection at present. They're a 70 point model with very little damage outlay, they've got no invuln save, they've got a 4+ armor, and they're slow as heck at 5-inch movement. Yet they need to be within 12 inches of enemy models to use their main ability, which isn't all that, so it's quite rare that you're going to even see this one fielded. But to then add to this, the Arkana on top of the cost is making a total of 95 points for that Cryptek model, which makes it a pretty bad selection. Now when comparing them to a standard Marine Librarian who is 90 points, they've got the options of the war gear, and even the standard loadout will still beat the Psychomancers as well. Then they've got more attacks, they've got better movement, better save, they've got 2 psychic powers, and even the option of having a jump pack too. Just feels like our Cryptek doesn't quite stack up. If it was open to any of the Cryptek models and had the potential of doing d6 mortal wounds, then maybe it'll see a bit of play. Also the cost needs to be lowered to around 15 points, but purely based on where the Psychomancer is within the game right now, I can't rate this Arkana that highly, so I'm going to go with 2 stars. So next we've got the Cortical Subjects Scarabs for 15 points or 1 power level. So this can be used with any Cryptek. It's only once per battle at the start of the heroic intervention step of the opponent's charge phase. You can select one friendly dynasty unit within 6 inches of the bearer. Then unless the unit is within engagement range of enemy units, it can perform a heroic intervention as if it was a character. So I'm quite on the fence with this one because we've got a stratagem that allows Canoptic units to do this without any need for a Cryptek model holding a 15 point Arkana. Although you do have to spend 1 command point, and it only works on Canoptic units of course. And that stratagem will be Enslaved Protectors for 1 command point there, which I've displayed on the screen for you. Now characters as well can use it anyway, but only within 3 inches as opposed to 6 inches with their standard heroic intervention abilities. So this just really leaves non-characters and non-canoptic units that want to get into melee as well. So that's really only leaving your Lich Guard and your Destroyer cult units such as your Ophidian Destroyers and your Scorpion Destroyers. And remember, it must be a Dynasty unit, so no Praetorians and no Catan Shards there. Realistically, this isn't going to happen an awful lot, especially if you declare this Arkana pre-game to your opponent. They will be very mindful of staying away from units unless they're being charged. It could, however, assist in those times where an enemy unit has the fly keyword and leaps over your shielding Lich Guard to make a charge against your noble perhaps. But I just advise on better positioning with the character model to begin with and not leaving it exposed even from the back. Now it's not the worst Arkana in the mix, but it's still very costly at 15 points. I'd say the value should be more between 5 and 10 points to get a little bit of usage there. So this Arkana I'm going to be giving a 2-star rating. Okay, on to the third one within the list, which is the Countertemporal Nanomines for 30 points or 2 power level. so this is the joint most expensive Arkana within the list. Limited to a Chronomancer only, but it's probably our best Cryptek option, so that's no issue there. So it has a little bit of a hint of a Psychomancer's Harbinger of Despair ability, but this one's just way better, as it's not a 12-inch range, it's 18-inch range and doesn't require you to beat leadership with 3 dice. So this one's actually very effective, as a basic 6-inch charge now requires a roll of a 12 with the 2 charge dice. In fact, even a minor 4-inch charge now has less than a 50% chance of succeeding, as it would require an 8. So if your Chronomancer is stationed within a group of warriors, this could literally buy them an entire turn to shoot at the oncoming threat, trim the opposing unit's numbers down to the point where the damage won't even be worth it, which could be worth a whole lot more than 30 points. 2 dead warriors alone is 26 points. Just your opponent knowing that you've actually got this may make them even not bother with the charge to begin with. It's a bonus that it works for the advanced rolls too, as a lot of factions and specific units can advance and then charge. So 30 points feels like quite a lot, but when you do deep dive into it, it's totally fine. Pair it with a Resurrection Orb or even a Ghost Arc for super cheese, and you can even get a Technomancer in there too. It's just a shame that a Technomancer can't actually take this Arkana, that would be magic. But for the rating, I think this is one of our better options, so I'm going to go with a 5-star rating. This is of course only being compared to the other Arkanas within this list, so something's got to get a 5, right? Next we have the Crypto Geometric Adjuster. So this one's 15 points or 1 power level and can be used on any of the 4 Cryptek models. So it's done at the start of the opponent's shooting phase. You can select an enemy unit within 12 inches and visible. Then until the end of the phase, each time a model in the unit makes an attack, you subtract 1 from the attack hit rolls. So I'm not feeling this one for a few reasons. A, you've got to get within 12 inches to use it, and that could unlock rapid fire abilities on rapid fire weapons. B, it's going to get you within charge range for your opponent's next turn, and Crypteks cannot fight very well in melee. So even though you do inflict a -1 to hit with their melee weapons, you've just put yourself in a bit of danger for an oncoming charge in the next go. Then C, there's so many ways of getting a +1 to the hit modifiers with the units nowadays, whether it's from character buffs or stratagems, or sometimes the sheer amount of shots and attacks in general just do the job in its numbers. I'd like to see the range of this ability improved to 24 inches and maybe the points drop down to 10 to see a little bit more use, but as for the rating, I'm going to go with 1.5 stars. Not a fan of this one at all. Okay, number 5 is nice and easy, Dimensional Sanctum for 15 points or 1 power level. So the bearer simply gains Dimensional Translocation ability, which effectively is Deep Strike for your Cryptek model. So this has got multiple uses, so maybe you're going to be sticking a Veil of Darkness relic on that same Cryptek to let him bounce around multiple times within the battle. Maybe it's a way to meet your overlord carrying the Veil of Darkness relic who took some maybe Lich Guard, carrying the War Scythes. They're still going to want the in-1 save, but of course they've given up the in-1 save because of the War Scythes. So putting this Arkana on a Chronomancer to come in and issue the in-1 save on the following turn, all while the Lich Guard are still hitting on 2s with that might be done ability from the Overlord. Or maybe the Plasmancer wants to get in nice and early to make max use of the Harbinger of Destruction ability and the Living Lightning abilities, which throw out mortal wounds. There's plenty more ways to use it, but it gives us a much needed bit of flexibility to our deployment. We don't have enough of these methods of deep striking in without paying for a Veil of Darkness tax or getting a Night Scythe to get us in. So this one's another easy 5-star for me. Okay, on to the next one, which is the Failsafe Overcharger for 30 points. The other one, which is the joint most expensive within the list, and it is restricted to a Technomancer model. So in the command phase, you select a friendly Canoptic unit within 9 inches of the bearer. Then until the start of the next command phase, you're going to be adding 1 to the attacks characteristics of all the models in the unit. And if it's a monster or vehicle unit, you're going to be adding the 3 attacks instead of 1. So this can work in a few ways. Firstly, you need to max out a unit of Canoptic Wraiths. They get 4 attacks base with a claws, which will double if you're using the whip coils to 8 attacks. So adding another base attack to 6 Wraiths is basically 6 additional strength 6 attacks with the claws, that -2 AP and 2 damage, or 12 additional attacks with the whip coils, that strength 4 -1 AP. Either way, there's a lot of extra attacks for each fight phase, and that includes your opponent's fight phase. So this works double bubble there. Alternatively, Canoptic Spiders are going to receive D3 more attacks as their monsters, taking a max unit of 3 spiders. That multiplies a lot there, with a potential of 9 attacks at strength 8. Well worth it on either one of those units. So not so much with the Canoptic Scarabs, as they don't do that much in terms of damage, especially in min units, but maybe a max unit of 9 of them with 9 more strength 3 attacks is okay when fighting toughness 3 units. Then you've also got the option of the Tomb Stalker and the Tomb Sentinel too, because they're both Canoptic units. This Arkana also pairs quite nicely when you add one of the War Gear options to your Technomancer, whether it's the Cloak that allows him to keep up with those Wraiths and even heal them D3 lost wounds each turn, or the Node, which allows the spider units to hit on 3s as they don't move too much, and it's even linking to those Doomstalkers to hit on 3s as well with the Node, because the Control Node is actually an aura ability working on multiple Canoptic units at once. So this is one of our best Arkanas here, and I would give it a 5-star rating, but you can only really be using it on those said scenarios. If you don't have max units of Wraith, for example, just don't buy it. You may as well get another Wraith for 5 points more. That way you'll just get 4 attacks more, but then you're going to have another 3 wound model with a 4+ invulnerable save. Okay, halfway in, and next is the Hypermaterial AB for 25 points or 1 power level. Yet another pricey one here, but it's going to work on all the Cryptek models. So you select a Dynasty Core or Dynasty Canoptic unit within 9 inches of the Cryptek, then until the start of the next command phase, each time a range attack is made against the unit, if the attacker is more than 12 inches away, the unit selected is treated as having the benefits of light cover. So only works on a Core or Canoptic unit, unfortunately. Virtually gives you guys a +1 to their armor save. Now warriors holding the Gorse Reapers won't really feel it, as their weapons are only 12-inch range, so they need to be close anyway. However, the warriors with the Gorse Flayers could benefit, because unless your opponent has a melee based army, they won't want to get within rapid fire range of your Gorse Flayer attacks. It could also be used to keep the Scarab Swarms alive while they're doing their secondary objectives, of course, especially with that Ancient Machinery secondary within the Necron Codex. Now a few things of note here: a Chronomancer given a unit the Chronometron 5+ invuln save ability can in some situations make the Arkana pointless. For example, a Chronomancer with a large swarm of Scarabs, giving them a 5+ invulnerable save, sounds great at first, but when you're putting the Arkana on them, pushing that 6+ armor save to a 5+ armor save with light cover, they're going to have the 5+ invulnerable save anyway. It doesn't really make any odds whatsoever. However, a Chronomancer gifting a 20-man warrior unit a 5+ invulnerable save alongside a 3+ armor save in light cover will definitely make a difference. Also worth knowing that this is not going to stack if you're actually within light cover. Again, it's not the worst one here. Through the game you're going to save a few models, which kind of pays for itself, but I don't think it adds anything too much, especially when there's a lot of AP within the weapons nowadays, and they're just going to remove your save completely. Now combat doctrines alone with Space Marines can simply alter that. I think it could be slightly dropped from a 25 point Arkana to maybe 20 or even 15 at a push, but I would give it an average rating of 3 stars. Okay, next we've got the Metal-Dermal Tesla Weave for 20 points or 1 power level, used on any Cryptek. Done at the end of the charge step of your opponent's charge phase. You can select one enemy unit that finished a charge move within 6 inches of the bearer, roll a d6, on a 2+, the enemy unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. So it's going to require your Cryptek to be dangerously close to the action. Maybe he's actually been charged, so they're definitely going to be within 6 inches there. Now a 2+ is fairly easy to achieve, and d3 mortal wounds isn't too bad either. But if your Cryptek did get charged, he's likely dead by the end of the fight phase, and d3 mortal wounds isn't likely going to be finishing your opponent's unit off. So this clearly works better if the screening unit within 6 inches has been charged but your Cryptek hasn't, so that he still remains alive while throwing d3 mortal wounds out. It's also working better on a more aggressive Cryptek like a Plasmancer, for example, or possibly a Chronomancer, as he's got a 4+ invulnerable save, so it can potentially survive a round of combat and then fall back. It would be nice if it didn't just work on charging units, but maybe any unit within 6 inches, whether they charge or not, that would be better, especially for a Kamikaze Plasmancer there. But this one's way too pricey for me. It's not going to see play, and there's much better options within the Arkana list, so this one for me is only going to get a 1-star rating. It should be more like 5 points, not 20 points. So the next one is the Photons Transparator for 20 points or 1 power level again. So it's once per turn. The first saving throw that is failed by the Cryptek means the damage characteristic of that attack is changed to 0. So in order to actually use this one, the following things have to have happened. Either you've lost your Lookout Sir bubble, maybe you've lost your Cryptothralls, or you somehow got caught in melee. If either of these scenarios have happened, then the Cryptek is virtually dead anyway, as they don't carry many wounds, and they can't defend themselves that well in melee, as they're only toughness 4, and 3 out of the 4 Cryptek don't even have an invuln save to add to that. So ignoring the first single failed roll to the damage for the Cryptek does sound great, but really it's not. There will likely be multiple saves to make. This is only going to block 1 dice, whether it's in melee or at range. It's also the first failed saving throw, so you can't even select to wait for the high damage weapon after losing a single wound to a bolt gun, because the Arkana starts automatically on the first one. It's also likely to be used once in the battle, and likely he's not going to save him from death. If you're really desperate to save him, then you've got the option of using the Resurrection Protocol stratagem for 1 command point, although it is a 50-50 roll, but if you do succeed, he comes back at the end of the phase, which will protect him from any other damage that phase. Then you can at least attempt to flee back into a new Lookout Sir bubble if needed. For me, this is another one that should only be 5 to 10 points tops, so I'm going to be giving it a 1-star rating. Next is the Phlactering Hive, a Technomancer only Arkana for 20 points or 1 power level. Once per battle only, the bearer can use its Rites of Reanimation ability on either a Canoptic unit, a Dynasty Cult unit, or a Triumph Praetorian unit. instead of using it on a core unit. So usually this is used to bring back a single core model or D3 warriors per turn. Now with our limited core keyword in the codex, it's usually the warriors that you're actually bringing back there. But this Arkana is allowing us to bring back a more pricier model from the dead, one that usually can't be resurrected. Now Canoptic Wraiths are 35 points, and likewise with the Scorpic Destroyers and the Ophidian Destroyers, they're also 35 points. So you'd slightly gain if you bring one of those back, with this Arkana being only 20 points. Now Praetorians are 25 points, so the value isn't quite there. It's only 5 points gained, and that's if the unit doesn't even get wiped out before even using it, which does apply for all the units really. Just wanted to throw in a little comment from one of our members, Matt Kuhn, from our members Discord that we've recently launched. He simply put, I can usually get more than 20 points of value out of the Phlactering Hive since I run a unit of Wraiths that I use to harass the backfield. Now bringing back a single Wraith for 35 points, since I've got a Technomancer anyway, I might as well. So that's how Matt uses this thing. Now for me, I personally be using it on one of the more expensive units. Now you've either got the option of the Canoptic Spiders because they're 60 points base, or the Locust Heavy Destroyers, which are also 60 point models, because they've of course got the Destroyer cult keyword. Even the 50 point standard Locust Destroyers are also worth bringing back, but they aren't actually that good to field. But to be honest, even bringing back a single Wraith is okay, especially if you've maxed the unit out anyway. Otherwise, similar to the Failsafe Overcharger, it's just better to bring another Wraith than it is to buff the actual unit. Just remember, if you do use this on a Heavy Destroyer unit or one of the Canoptic Spiders, you need to have at least one more within the unit to use it on. If there's no one in the unit left and it's not being used, then it could in fact be a complete waste of points. I think this one's a little bit tricky to suggest a better way that it could have been written in terms of the rules, as it clearly works better for certain units. Now the price is okay for the purposes of that. Maybe they could have removed the limit of having it as a single use thing for models that are under 40 points and had one max that's over 50 points. I'm not sure, maybe that's just overcomplicating the rule slightly. But when you look at other factions, again I'm going to point to the Space Marines here with the Apothecaries. They do a whole lot more, and they do it each and every turn as well. In fact, Outriders are 50 points and they're going to be getting a Feel No Pain save alongside D3 Runes Returned, and then one can come back each and every turn for a single command point. Sometimes it's actually no command points, because if you upgrade the Apothecary to a Chief Apothecary for only 35 points, then it can be using that ability every single turn free of charge. So as for the rating for this Arkana, if you're using it correctly, then it's going to get a pretty tidy 4-star rating. Okay, nearly there, we're on to the penultimate Arkana, which is the Prismatic Obfuscatron, which is costing you 20 points or 1 power level again. So unless the bearer is the closest eligible unit, enemy models cannot target it with range attacks. So this competes with the actual Cryptothor models, as they virtually do the exact same thing with their Protector's ability. However, the bucket bots cost twice as much. I do personally think they are worth it for the extra attacks at range and in melee, and they can also score you some victory points too. But there is an advantage of using the Arkana as opposed to the Cryptothorals. The Arkana doesn't require you to be super close to the actual unit that the Cryptek is following. And bringing another one of our members here from the Discord again, he had a good point in terms of how he uses it. He said especially when you play them with a lot of Wraiths, it's fantastic when your Technomancer cannot be selected for range attacks, and I don't have to keep a certain distance to the units because I can fully exploit my control node aura with the Fire of the Silent King Warlord trait. So he puts the Warlord trait on there, which extends all of the aura abilities, which means his Technomancer can be a lot further back and still not be targeted. So for me, this one could be slightly cheaper, as I still believe 20 points more to get those 2 Cryptothorals is actually worth it. Maybe it could be 10 or 15 points here, but I'm going to be rating this one a 3-star rating. Okay, on to the final Arkana of the list, which is the Quantum Orb. It's 20 points and only works with the Plasmancer. So once per battle in the command phase, the bearer can activate the item. If it does, select one point on the battlefield anywhere within 24 inches of the bearer and place a marker at that point. Then at the start of the next command phase, you roll a d6 for each unit within 6 inches of the centre of the marker, subtracting 1 if it's a character. On a roll of a 4 or a 5, the unit will suffer d3 mortal wounds, and on a 6, they'll suffer a flat 3 mortal wounds, then you remove the marker. So it's a once per battle item, has that feel of an orbital bombardment ability. Now the Plasmancer's got a few tricks already for throwing out mortal wounds, so it is quite fitting that he gets this one. So there are 2 ways that you can actually use this. The first is to simply deter opposing units from being in a certain location on the battlefield, whether it's a primary objective or just a key location that you don't want your enemy units in. It could even protect your units this way too. Or secondly, you can use it to catch units that are already in combat, as if they've got to fall back and then give up their damage output for the turn, or stay and face the mortal wounds. There are a few issues here. Firstly, that it's 24-inch range, and you've got to roll a 4+ just to get it to do something, which I personally think stinks. I think this should be a 2+ roll, as it's going to be costing you 20 points for a single-use bomb that likely won't do anything due to that 6-inch range, and it's got a 50-50 chance of even doing anything anyway. However, in a more clustered battle against hordes for example, this could be a dream as it's not a single unit that gets impacted, it's any unit within 6 inches. For me the price is okay, but the 4+ just isn't good enough, especially when there's an entire turn to get out of the radius of the orb. So this one's only a 2-star for me, really useful for moving units away from locations, but not for his actual damage output. So guys, that's the Cryptek Arkana in a nutshell, summed up for us. I hope this helps somewhat. So let's select a comment at random from my last Necron video to give a shout out to. So this one's going to Scribinage for his comment relating to the members list analysis 4, which was Joe M's list, and he had some interesting ideas on what he would change within that list there. So guys, that's the video today. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.